Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are out here at the range with some old school XM-177 clones. This is the original, the original issued version of the carbine version of the AR-15, and one of the distinctive elements about them is that muzzle device. And we've gotten really used to seeing those as dummy flash suppressors like this. This is an older Troy clone, fantastic rifle, and it's got this like 4.5-inch muzzle device on it. It's pinned and welded so that it can turn basically an 11.5-inch barrel into a full 16-inch barrel that doesn't require a tack stamp. What actually happened though, what these were actually equipped with was originally an 11.5-inch barrel with a 4.5-inch suppressor on it. This is a cutaway from Lehman Manufacturing. They are currently making both cutaways and fully functional copies, really good copies, of the original XM-77, they were called Moderators. So when the gun came out, this is 1965 or so, and they're in Vietnam, they're being used in Vietnam, and remember that at this point, no one was wearing ear protection when they were shooting. So guys were basically acclimated to the sound of a 20-inch M16A1 report. Excuse this one for not having a muzzle device, long story. This is what people were used to. And yes, this will absolutely damage your hearing. That's why a lot of Vietnam War vets are very hard of hearing today. But this is not as painful to listen to as a 10.5 or 11.5-inch barreled carbine. And so when these guns got tested, one of the immediate pieces of feedback was the blast and the noise are actually like painful. They are disruptive to the shooter to actually use, and we need some way to quiet them down. And so Colt developed this moderator. They just called it a flash hider, a muzzle device moderator. This was not at the time considered a silencer or a suppressor. And its job was simply to take a short carbine and quiet it to the point that it sounded the same as an unsuppressed standard 20-inch rifle. That was the goal. So we have one of Lehman's new production, fully functional ones here. He is selling these for $300. He does have two different versions of them. This is the XM version to go on an XM-177. He also has the GX version, which is the slightly earlier pattern that does not have the flash hider slots on it. Those were developed for the Colt 607s. You'll see them kind of used interchangeably in a variety of places on early testing, but internally they're exactly the same suppressor, just one has the flash hider slots on the end and the other doesn't. So what I want to do today is first do a little bit of shooting with this to see what it sounds like. Then I want to compare it to a fake muzzle device, fake flash hider here that is not a suppressor, and see if we can tell the difference. And then I want to compare it to the M16 to see if this actually makes this gun sound like that gun. That is quite loud. There is no way I am taking my ear pro off while I'm shooting that thing. For comparison's sake, all right, so to me, to my hearing here, that's relatively similar. We are going to take a minute and push the camera. We're going to take the microphone way back a couple hundred yards to see if we can get some audio data without the capping and the interference of noise cancellation on microphones. Unfortunately, I do not have sophisticated loudness measuring decibelometers. I'm not sure exactly what the term for those is. What I do have, though, is a report from the 1968 testing of the XM-177, which has a comparison from it at a given position that was like 5 feet off to the side of the muzzle. This guy came in at 161.7 decibels, and this guy came in at 159 to 160, depending on type of ammunition. So this was actually like 1 decibel quieter than the rifle until, by the way, you started shooting it a lot. Once you got past more than 9,000 rounds fired, this climbed up to 162 to 163 decibels because these chambers filled up with carbon. Not like completely filled, but they did get clogged with carbon. There was no way to clean these out. They are not disassemblable. This thing is all welded together. So it does function, according to the testing, appropriately. At first, 9,000 rounds is quite a lot of ammo to put through the gun. But, all right. Next up, let's see if we can tell a difference between fake flash hider and real moderator. So just to my ear, through Ear Pro, this has a higher pitch to it, but it's kind of hard for me to tell if it's actually louder or not. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and take the microphone, the camera and microphone, back a couple hundred yards to where the microphone's not going to be capping off the sound. And I'm gonna go. All right, to my ear, there was a little bit of difference. I could tell that the fake flash suppressor carbine seemed to be louder than either of the other 2 rifles. That said, listening back to that footage from a couple hundred yards away, oh man, it's really hard to distinguish much difference, which definitely tells us one thing, which we kind of already knew, which is these moderators are barely effective at doing much of any actual sound suppression. And you can recognize that, just look at how tiny the expansion chambers are. There's no blast chamber, there's just these 3 small and 1 very small expansion chambers. It really just is to take the edge off of the noise from a short-barreled carbine. In fact, also, if we look at this, you can see that this is a heavy little suppressor because the wall thickness and the internal thickness is really quite substantial. The reason for that is they decided that they wanted this thing to be capable of essentially withstanding a burn down test. So the first version of this was thinner and lighter, and in a 180 round full auto cyclic mag dump test, it exploded at like 100, I think it was about 179 rounds. The thing got red hot and then it cracked. And so they decided they needed to make it stronger because they wanted it to survive essentially dumping all of the ammunition that a soldier might have on them. So they increased the wall thickness substantially. They got it to the point where I think the gun broke after about 230 rounds and the suppressor was still okay at that point. They'd gotten it to the point where it could fire when red hot without actually destroying itself, and they figured that's good enough. The gun at that point was too hot to actually physically hold in the hands, so you probably don't need to make the suppressor any stronger than that. Anyway, the suppression on this is so minimal that it wasn't actually until 1975 or so that they were legally considered suppressors. It's at that point, Colt had been selling them on some commercial guns and actually had to reach out to some of its distributors and ask them to please send those back because ATF has determined that the 4-inch flash suppressor mounted on certain M16 commando automatic rifles falls under the legal definition of a silencer under part code blah blah blah. So Colt asked for them back and replaced them with standard M16A1 flash hiders. And it's because, like, legally speaking, this is a suppressor because it does reduce the sound of the report of the gun. However, in a practical matter, it's far from silencer as people would think of it. Hypothetically, this might do an okay job on like a 22 pistol. It is a 22 caliber can, so you're not going to put it on a 9mm or anything bigger like that. We'll have to get out here and actually try one of these on a 22 at some point. All right, let's do a little bit more shooting. I want to try and play it by ear and see if I can notice any more substantial difference between the two. So let's start with the fake carbine. This should be the loudest of the bunch. I can notice just, it's not so much that one's quieter than the other, it's just the tone is a little bit different. I am also being told by the camera that the concussion from the moderated gun is definitely less significant than the concussion from the flash hider carbine. And that's something that you don't really notice from behind the gun, but you do notice from the side. So let's try the moderator and the M16A1. Boy, it's just really hard to tell the difference very well, which I guess kind of tells us everything we need to know. So there it is. These are made by Lehman Manufacturing. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. They've been in business, he has been in business for a while. Most notably is the manufacturer originally of some absolutely fantastic DOE, the little snub-nosed 9mm AR upper reproductions. Before PSA started doing that, Lehman did it and did really good ones. He is offering these as both the XM can with the flash hider slots, the GX can for the Colt 607s, same thing without the slots, and cutaways like this. Price is $300 for either of the functional suppressors, which used to be like, it used to be no one was really super excited to go build a correct clone of an XM-177 because having a suppressor and a 10.5 or 11.5 inch barrel meant 2 tax stamps, $400, and a lot of weight. Well, now all of those stamps are zero. The weight is like 2 days. And to me, it's a lot more interesting now to be able to build a proper clone like this one, SBR, and a legally functional, if not actually functional, suppressor to give you the original actual mechanics, condition, shooting experience of an XM-177. I will point out the cutaway is very cool. It's actually more expensive. It's $350 because I think he has to make it and then also cut it away. And he does register these as live suppressors as well, simply, I believe, out of an abundance of legal caution. So this is probably not as interesting to people as getting one of the real deals, but very cool to have these on the market. I know they're not the only ones on the market, but as far as I can tell, they are the best ones on the market. They do a fantastic job of recreating the originals, and it's really pretty cool to have them on a gun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.